broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to episode 171 of Gun Guy Radio. This is the podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Ryan Machad, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. This week, I'm joined by Matt Hoffman to discuss some of our journeys into the Blackpowder shooting world. Now, it can be a little overwhelming or confusing figuring out how to enjoy a Blackpowder handgun or rifle, and hopefully hearing our experiences will help you out with yours. So, Matt, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How you doing?
Oh, good to have you on. You're a frequent contributor over on Handgun Radio, but is this your first time on GGR? You actually did an episode after I did when we first started out on the network, right?
Yep, I was right after you.
I think I did classic revolvers, and I believe you did modern and competition.
Yep, that was it.
I think that's Gun Guy Radio episode 77 or 76, I think, but I'll put a link there in the show notes so people can go check that out. So what did you do this week, Matt?
I had an IDPA match Saturday, and since it was the anniversary of D-Day, I decided to shoot my old 1917 Smith revolver, kind of celebrate. Although chances of one of the 1917s being at D-Day was pretty slim, unless it was on one of the drop boats or something. But
right,
still shooting a little bit of history out there.
Now, what were some of the challenges you encountered in using that gun? Because I know that it's massive for anybody who's never held one of the Colt New Services or the Smith & Wesson 1917s. They're a massive revolver.
It's big, but it's actually, as far as grip, it's smaller than what I'm using now, because I use, of course, the cushy grips. This had the old or wood splinter grips on it, but it's a 5.5-inch barrel, so I shoot fours, so it took a lot more effort to bring it up out of the holster than my comp guns. And then the front sight basically looks like a dime cut in half on the front of the barrel, so there's not much to really see, and your rear sight is just a channel milled into the frame itself. So it's hard to pick up quickly. It's very accurate, but like I said, it's not really meant for competition. But if I could have shot better, or I could have controlled it better, it would have done everything it was asked of it. I came in 25th out of 32. So I beat, 7 bottom feeders, so I was pretty happy with that.
For people who don't know, the 1917s were a chambered in .45 ACP, and so you actually do have somewhat of a competition advantage because you're using moon clips still. It's not like you're actually loading them individually like you might have to in a different caliber.
Yeah, I used the full moons, which is the modern version. Originally, that gun would have had the half moon, so you would have had 3 rounds clipped together, and you would drop in 2 separately. And I didn't have enough to actually compete with those, so I ended up wussing out and using the full moons. But it's still a pretty quick reload. It's not 1911 fast with slamming a magazine home, but it's still pretty darn quick.
Yeah, now, how is the .45 ACP in your eyes out of a revolver with that long of a barrel? Because I know some people complain with the snubby .45s that they may not be up to the velocity that you would normally expect out of a handgun.
Yeah, you're getting plenty of velocity out of that. Even out of the 4-inch, you're getting plenty of velocity out of it. The recoil impulse is completely different. If you shoot an M&P or Glock or 1911, the recoil is night and day out of the revolver. Even though it's heavy, it's pretty substantial, and especially with this one having the small wood grips. I've got about the size of a pencil eraser gnawed out of my thumb, and my thumb is still swollen from the recoil, that top strap coming back into my thumb.
But it was worth it, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was the belle of the ball. Everybody wanted to talk about it, and I don't know, it was just cool shooting a piece of history like that, because that one there is a real early. It's under 12,000.
Oh, wow.
The serial, and the first 60,000 were issued were actually went to the lines from everything I've gathered, and the HWS is a stamp on the top of the frame for the inspector for the early models.
Yeah.
So this one here would have saw combat almost most certainly.
No, that's awesome. I like those old wheel guns that actually use the auto pistol rounds, so I'm going to have to pick one up myself. As always, please consider supporting the Firearms Radio Network by shopping Amazon using our Amazon affiliate link at firearmsradio.tv/Amazon. A portion of your purchase will go towards helping the FRN create awesome pro-gun content. So with that, we'll head into the main topic, entering the Blackpowder handgun and rifle world.
Do you shop on Amazon? How about your spouse? Does your mom? Does your, company? Why not use the Firearms Radio Network's Amazon affiliate link next time you shop Amazon? Bookmark firearmsradio.tv/Amazon or click through the Amazon link in the right-hand corner of firearmsradio.tv. Get it? Got it? Amazon it!
All right, so we're into the main topic. Now, shooting black powder can be kind of scary for someone who isn't familiar with it. I actually just had a few people over the past few weeks. It's kind of funny. Like, all at once, I've had 3 or 4 emails asking if we'd ever done an episode about black powder shooting. Once you know all the rules for safe use, black powder can be a very fun and rewarding experience. It's probably one of the most inexpensive to get into as well. I was able to buy my revolver. It's an 1851 Pieta Navy Colt 44, and all the stuff I needed for right around $200. So it's definitely a fun hobby to get into, and you can get started with relatively little outlay. So, Matt, have you shot both loose black powder and the cartridge stuff, or is it just the cartridge stuff?
I've done both. I've done, actually quite a bit of the black powder muzzle loading with my flintlocks for the past year. Been kind of getting to that. And I've been dabbling into cartridges. It's a little more difficult, so I've kind of waited until I got more time to really devote to it. But use both.
I would like to do the cartridge stuff, but I think about it, and then I'm like, do I really want to have to go in and tear my gun completely down and clean it? I mean, you have to do it, obviously, with smokeless powder, too, but it's much less often than the black powder stuff.
Yeah, and you've got case prep. There's a lot more steps into it. You've really got to be dedicated to that discipline. So
Right. So at first here, probably the most important part is the difference between black powder and smokeless powder. So black powder, for lack of a better term, explodes compared to the burning action of smokeless powder. Black powder is a mixture of several things, including sulfur, and it's also corrosive. Smokeless powder is a nitrocellulose base, and it has more of a controlled burning action. So different powders burn at different rates and different intensities. Smokeless powder usually has a pretty quick pressure curve, and it reaches a given peak pressure really fast. But with black powder, there isn't that much of a variation. So you have black powder, and it comes with 4 different grain sizes: FG, FFG, 3FG, and 4FG. The different grain sizes that you use depend upon what firearm you're shooting. F and 2FG are appropriate for cannons, mortars, and larger caliber rifles. 3FG is typically used in the smaller bore rifles and the cap and ball revolvers, and then 4FG is usually only used to prime the pans on flintlocks. Now, using any smokeless powder in a black powder firearm will typically result in the gun being destroyed and potential injury to yourself. So if you shoot your firearm with real black powder, though, it really does require a thorough cleaning to prevent damage because it is corrosive. So I shoot black powder substitute, and that works perfectly fine for me. Now, black powder substitute, it's a replacement for black powder, and it has a number of advantages, primarily in reduced sensitivity as an explosive and increased efficiency as a propellant powder. One of the most popular ones is Pyrodex by Hodgdon. And then I also have used American Pioneer powder, which actually worked quite well and also doesn't require as much intensive cleanup afterwards because it's pretty clean burning to begin with. So, Matt, what do you prefer, black powder substitute or the original stuff?
The original stuff. I don't get into the newfangled young guy stuff.
So
No.
Is the cleaning really as bad as I hear?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's after every shot, usually you'll swab it with it's kind of a soapy lube cleaner, and then reload again. And at the end of it, basically you're turning it upside down and use some of the foaming cleaners, go through the touch-off hole and let it drip down and really scrub it, because it's highly corrosive, like you said, and it is nasty to clean.
Yeah, it's from what I hear, like, to me, I don't know if the hassle would be worth it, to be honest. I got the experience, I think, but I've heard everybody say, yeah, you shot black powder substitute, but once you fire off real black powder, you'll understand.
Yeah, I mean, the smell is pretty intoxicating. It's pretty nice. And the guys that have been teaching me, I've been running with, they're all old guys. They do the rendezvous, so they go primitive camping, and they have all the accessories, and that's the only thing they'll use. They said that they don't get the accuracy or the power out of the new stuff as they do the pure, GoX or Gex, however you want to say it,
right.
Black powder or the Swiss. And so I've been doing it. Like I said, I'm not shooting thousands of rounds. I may shoot 50. I mean, if I do get away, and so it's with the right chemicals now. It's a lot easier to clean. So I go ahead and just use the original black powder.
Now, what do you use for a granulation? Do you use 2F or 3F?
I use the 3F. I've got my main Kentucky long rifle is a 40 caliber, so I use the triple F, and then I got a flintlock, so I use the 4F for my primer.
Yeah. I was kind of disappointed because when I first got my revolver, I went over and I bought, all they had was 2F, and so I tried that, and it actually did work quite well. But then I just went yesterday to try to find some 3F, and they were like, we decided we didn't want to carry any of it anymore. And all the shops I went to didn't have anything. So. Yeah,
I've got 2 shops that I can go get powder if I need it in a pinch, but most of the newer shops, and of course the box stores, they don't have anything.
Right.
Other than the pellets
and
for
those
the
don't really
inlines.
Those don't really work for the revolvers.
Yeah, that we're talking about now. So you got to find a specialty place. You got to hold on to it and make sure that they tell them you're going to keep on buying it, so they keep it stocked.
Because it is a real pain to order it online, from what I hear.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm close to Friendship, Indiana, which is one of the main ranges for muzzle loading. So I can go up there and buy it. They got a huge warehouse full of it. So it's about an hour away from me, so it's not bad. I can buy it in bulk and just have it because it doesn't go bad.
Right.
So
one of the first questions I often hear is, what do I need to shoot black powder revolvers without pulling my hair out? So first, you're going to need the proper size caps. Most revolvers will take number 10 caps. Some revolvers require the number 11 caps, which are a little bit larger. Some people use the number 11 caps on a nipple that is meant for number 10 caps, and they pinch it just a little bit to make it fit a little bit tighter. I personally don't recommend this because I have heard from other people that it can lead to a chain fire if the caps don't fit properly. But you can also replace the nipples on the back of the gun, on the back of the cylinder, and fit the cap size that is most readily available to you. Now, what I found around here is most everybody carries number 10s, and I haven't found any number 11s. How is it around your area?
You can find both pretty readily.
Right.
So, but the nipples are cheap.
Yeah,
and
it's like $6 for a whole pack.
Yeah, and they're not hard to replace. So if you find one that's more prevalent in your area, just swap them out. Because you can see the gap when you crush them, and the flash that comes out, instead of directing down through the nipple, it's coming around. So I could see where that would cause a chain reaction.
Which you do not want.
Possibly, yeah.
So secondly, like we said, you need powder. I do recommend the substitute if you're just getting started to see if you like it. And, I may end up shooting it with real black powder, but for right now, the substitute's fine for me. It's just simply for ease of cleaning. I definitely recommend finding the 3F. The 2F worked in a pinch for me, but you'll probably get better power and accuracy with the 3F because you'll actually be able to get a proper charge in there. And then the most important thing when loading your black powder is your powder measure. Most of the new black powder kits that come with the pistols or the rifles have a brass adjustable powder measure that comes with the gun. It's an essential piece of equipment. You need to use that. I've heard some people just say, just stuff the chambers full and seat the ball. And no, that kind of advice just makes me tear my hair out. You need to measure each charge, so that way you know what you're shooting. Now, some powder flasks have a set measure built into the nozzle. I don't like those because it can allow the unknowing to pour powder directly from the flask into the chamber, and that's not something you want to do because you may have an errant spark in there or something smoldering in the chamber, and now you have a hand grenade in your hand.
Yeah, you've got a bomb in your hand, so It's just something you want to measure out.
And go from the horn to the measure or whatever you need to do, but just don't be pouring that whole flask into the rifle or handgun. Now, what do you use, Matt? Do you use a brass measure or something different?
Yeah, I've got the brass measure, but I've also, if I go primitive, I've got the possibles bag, so I've got a horn that has a capacity for 40 grains, is what I use. So I go from the powder horn to the smaller horn that I actually drop down in there. So it's measured, even though it's a horn.
Right.
But like I said, you're going from a large container to the small container, which is pre-measured. So every round is measured.
Right, and you're not pouring it directly in there and potentially having a bomb in your hand.
Yeah, now if that horn holds a pound of powder, so it's you might not come back from it.
That would not be good. And chain fires are another thing that people hear about and they're worried about. There are two methods of preventing this. One is to use one of the many lube products that are out there on the market today. Those prevent the ignition from one chamber from reaching the other chambers because it's basically sealed. I think some people say they use Crisco too, but I've just bought the Blackpowder lubes because it has the added advantage of keeping the black powder fouling nice and soft. Another really effective way, and the way that I hear most of the old guys talk about, the older experienced guys, don't mean to say anything, Matt,
Thanks.
is the round balls that are slightly oversized. Now, when you seat the balls, it shaves a ring of lead, signifying that a good seal's been achieved. Now, Matt, have you ever shot the pistols, and what has been the method you've used? Do you patch the ball, or?
I've patched the balls. I've only used the pistol a few times. My buddy's got the Ruger Old Army.
Yep.
And we use the lube most because it's a pain to try to patch each one. So he just ended up, he had the right size ball. I think his was 44, and then used the lube on the end. It was a nice tight bore though, so it sealed up pretty well. But we did I can't remember what brand of lube he had, but it felt like Crisco. It was a heavy grease to seal it.
Now, what do you think? What would you feel more comfortable with if you were using? Would it be the lube? Because I've shot my my Pieta without. I used the lube a few times, but I tried it one time just making sure the balls were a little bit oversized, and I never had an issue.
We did it both ways, and his were tight fitting, but they weren't shaving, and we didn't have a problem of a day of shooting. But granted, that was maybe 5 or 6 cylinders that day, so it wasn't, extensive testing.
Right.
So, if I was betting my life on it, I probably would use the lube. The only thing with using the oversized ball, I worry about the accuracy out of it, flat spotting it by putting it in. Have you used an oversized ball? I
believe mine are 4.54, I think, on my 44, but they may be 4.51.
Yeah, I can't remember what his are. Like I said, I would probably go use the grease method myself.
I do know that I've had really, really good accuracy with it, so I don't know if there's an issue there or anything like that, but I'll have to look. I'm not sure exactly what size they are, but I do know they are shaving a ring when they're seated, and I was putting probably inch and a half groups at 25 yards off a rest.
Yeah, it's probably not a problem because you figure it's soft lead going down the barrel. It's probably rounding itself off again as it's going down, so...
And that's the thing, the round balls you're going to find are really soft lead. They're not like the hard cast bullets that you find. They are extremely soft. You can scratch them with your thumbnail pretty good. Yeah,
I've not tried hand casting any. They're so cheap to buy by the Hornadies. Then they're $10 a box for 100. So it's not bad at all.
I know my friend's looking for one of the smaller, I believe the 31 caliber percussion, so he can just buy a big bag of some buckshot that's properly sized and have all the round balls he'll need.
Yeah, I've been looking for a flintlock pistol in 40 caliber. That way I have a matching set, so I can just keep the one set around.
Right.
But it's pretty hard. It's kind of an odd caliber, so it's a little bit harder to find.
Now, you have more experience with the cartridge side of loading black powder, so what kind of prompted you to get thinking about that?
Well, I got an enabler. The guy's been really my mentor and teaching me the gunsmithing and everything. That's his passion, is working on the single-shot rifles. And it's contagious. So that's when I started buying up some of these Winchester high and low walls and the rolling blocks that you've seen, on my Facebook page and everything.
Right.
And it's just interesting as hell going back to the old Buffalo guns and Target guns, the 1800s and into the very early 1900s. But the problem I have is you've really got to be 100% into it. You've got to load it correctly. You've got to clean your rounds. You got to clean your rifle. It's not something that, like your 22, take out, shoot a few hundred rounds, throw it in the safe, and clean it up later. Like we've said before, it's corrosive, so you've got to clean that barrel out. You got to clean your brass, and you've almost got to cast for it because you're not going to find black powder rounds at Walmart.
Right. It's like, don't some companies make them though?
Yeah, they are out there, but they are terribly expensive. But, there's a lot that goes into it. So, I'm not saying they're not worth it. But if you really want to shoot a lot, you are going to have to reload for black powder cartridge.
Yeah, it's definitely... And then I hear something about the drop tube, and I heard that a lot of people use that, and it's fairly important to the black powder cartridge reloading. Yeah,
all the guys that, I hang around or know, they all use the drop tube because they're trying to get as much powder in there as they can.
Right.
And most of these, you're looking at, some of these cartridges have, 500, 600 grain bullets. It's a long bullet. And so it's got to compress that load because if you have any airspace, you could have a rupture, explosion,
Right.
Most of these rifles will have it. They'll have a blow-off hole just for that reason. Most of your, falling blocks, you'll look and there'll be a hole that comes up through the firing pin. They'll let off some of that pressure so it doesn't blow the gun up. But like I said, it's pretty involved. It's probably even more involved than the regular smokeless that we've talked about in the past.
Well, and it's crazy too because you have like all these really weird cartridges like the 5090 and the 5110, and I mean looking at the 5090, like 5090 sharp. So your bullet diameter is .512. It's rimmed straight taper. It's a 2.5 inch long case and a 3.2 inch long overall cartridge length. And like one of your highest loadings, you're pushing a 550 grain flat nose bullet at 1448 feet per second for 2,561 foot-pounds of energy.
Yeah,
I mean that is moving.
Yeah, I mean I had 4570 and 4065, and my buddy runs 4465. Because it's a totally straight wall. There's no taper to it. So he can get a lot more volume in there because they shoot black powder silhouette. So they're looking for accuracy, and it's got to have enough knockdown power at 1,000 yards to knock the steel down. And I think they're shooting a ram at that distance. I can't hardly keep up. But, so it's the drop, like we talked about the drop tube, you're using gravity to just kind of hammer each granule down. So they can get, 60, 70, 80, 90 grains of powder into that case.
Right. Now, let's slightly touch upon the inline muzzle loaders. I have no experience with those. Do you at all?
I've shot it, but I wouldn't say I've got experience with it.
They're more of like they're the most similar to a cartridge gun, probably, that you'll get out there in the quote-unquote black powder world, right?
Yeah, because you're actually using a shotgun primer on some of them. Some of them you're still using the caps like we talked about before.
But the shotgun primers are much more prevalent, I think.
Yeah, pretty much they all have switched over to the 209, which is nice, but you can find those 209 primers just about anywhere. And there's a lot of different ones, so you can kind of get a little different burn rate from switching to what primer you go with. But they're also easy because you can get those pellets, drop the pellets down in there, drop one of the modern rounds in there, and you're good to go.
Like
it's reliable and safe.
Sabot hollow point or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is easy. And if you're using that for muzzleloading hunting, I'd say it's probably the way to go. It's the easiest, and if you need a follow-up shot, you can actually do it fairly quickly.
Right, and I mean, a lot of states, they have the expanded muzzleloader season, so that some people could take advantage of that, where they otherwise may not have the time or inclination to invest in like a flintlock setup or a percussion setup like you have.
Yeah, easy all the way around. They've got good sights, and they can be fairly inexpensive. There's a lot of brands out there that are in $250 to $500, and you've got pretty much a modern hunting rifle,
right?
But still a muzzle loader.
No, they definitely are fun. I would not hesitate to recommend to anybody that if you want to have a fun little change on your shooting hobby, definitely look into ordering one of the Blackpowder revolvers or the Blackpowder rifles, because it really is fun. When I first thought about it, I was like, well, I'm getting this, and if it's too much work, I won't worry about doing it. But once I started doing it and just shooting it, I don't know, it's a different spin on shooting, and it kind of shakes up the boring old, go to the range and shoot at paper, shoot at steel, and you're more involved having to load each shot, and it really is fun. So definitely don't let the complexity of it keep you back from getting involved in it.
Yeah, you've got to make the rounds count because it takes so long to load it.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'd inherited two, and I didn't shoot them for years because I wanted to pass them down to our sons because their grandfather had actually made the rifles.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was afraid I was going to blow it up. There wasn't enough, to me, there wasn't enough information out there that I felt comfortable doing it on my own.
Right.
And you hear all these horror stories, which it's like everything else on the internet. It's probably somebody that hasn't ever shot black powder. They're going by what somebody else said. So, like I said, if you buy one of those kits like you bought with that pistol, it's a kit, it's got everything in it. You really can't go wrong as long as you just take your time, follow it. It's for me, shooting competition, being under the clock and all that stuff, to going out in the woods and shooting a steel plate with this, taking my time, it was fantastic. It was just 100% difference. It was great. So I recommend anybody just, at least trying it. Even if they build one of those Traditions kits for $200, they get a little woodworking, they get a little bit of metal finishing, and they get the pride of building themselves and then learning something new.
That's all there is to it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it for real. So, excellent, Matt. Well, I think that about wraps up the main topic, so we will head into the wrap-up section and close out the show.
Well, I didn't think you had it in you. I'm your Huckleberry. You look like somebody just walked over your grave. Fight's not with you. I beg to differ, sir. We started a game we never got to finish. Play for blood, remember? I was just fooling about. I wasn't. Show Johnny Ringo who's boss with Patriot Patch Company's Huckleberry Patch. A must-have for any range bag. Pre-order yours today at patriotpatch.co.
So, Matt, I just want to say thanks a lot for coming on. I know not your usual stomping grounds, usually over there with me on Handgun Radio, so I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about black powder and sharing with us your experience with the cartridge side of it, because I don't have any. Yeah,
it's pretty deep. You could do a whole show or two just on the black powder cartridge. So, we just kind of touched upon it, but it's worth for people to look into it and learn more about it.
Absolutely, and like I was talking about this weekend when I was reloading, if you don't want to get into black powder and you want to stick with smokeless, but go with a powder that's good for beginners, I highly recommend Trail Boss. It's an easy powder to, when you start out loading, the chances are extremely likely if you have an overcharge that you're going to spill the powder out of the case. So definitely look at Trail Boss if you're wanting to get into reloading and you're a little bit nervous and you're reloading like 38, 357, 45 long Colt, something like that. Definitely look into that. That's a good powder to start with, especially for those high capacity cases like the 357. So Matt, thanks a lot for coming on, and where can people find you?
Usually I'm hanging out over at www.revo-nation.com. I'm hoping to start a blog up over there, so maybe by the time this releases, I'll have some over there. But that's for the future.
Absolutely, yeah, that'll be great. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. So thanks again, Matt, for coming on, and have a great week.
Thanks for having me.
Gun Guy Radio says thank you and proudly displays artwork and graphics designed by Ryan Cross of Hunter of Design. hunterofdesign.com.
Well, I hope you're enjoying Gun Guy Radio, and if you are, please consider going over to patreon.com/FRN. What is Patreon, you might ask? Well, Patreon is a simple way for you to crowdfund every episode of Gun Guy Radio. If you're enjoying the show, you can head over to patreon.com/FRN and pledge $1 an episode or $5 an episode to help support pro-gun radio like this. So that about wraps up this episode of Gun Guy Radio. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes so that you never miss a show, and please leave us a review there as well, gunguyradio.com/iTunes. Please consider joining the NRA and the Second Amendment Foundation. There are links there in the show notes. And don't forget to check out the other shows on the Firearms Radio Network. Also, be sure to check out the Patriot Patch Company, started by FRN's own Jake Challand and Ryan Cross. Patriot Patch Company offers high-quality 3D PVC vinyl patches with Velcro backing that is sure to satisfy any taste. Their new I'm Your Huckleberry patch is available for pre-order and is a personal favorite. Be sure to check them out at www.patriotpatch.co. This is Ryan Machad, and I'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv. Are you looking for an extraordinary daily carry option? Look no further. Car Arms is giving away a P9 with night sights right here on the Firearms Radio Network. It's Car's EDC drawing. To enter, simply become a Patreon of any Firearms Radio Network show. Current patrons are automatically entered. But wait, there's more. Keybar, Hellbent holsters, Alien Gear holsters, Precision Ear, and more have ponied up to enhance your EDC loadout. See all of these awesome prizes and more ways to enter at firearmsradio.tv/EDC.